You're listening to the Rogers Sporting Goods Podcast. This is Aaron Jones.
This is Chandler Smith, and I hate long intros, so let's get into it.
Are we officially recording?
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea where this podcast is going to go today, so we're just going to wing it.
No.
Pat, you got any deer on camera?
I've got a couple that I've seen over the last few years, but I'm late to the game this year. So it's a little bit different because the farmer rotates. And so a lot of my sets that I put around the field, it's a lot easier to do when it's beans.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. It's hard to get.
And he plants right up to the
tree line.
So it doesn't leave you any room except maybe walking.
No. So I'll do some in the timber, but during the summer, it's just tough once he gets planted, it's so tough.
You can't drive back there. You got to do it on foot.
Exactly. And when you're trying to carry a bunch of gear and minerals and all that stuff to set up.
And it's infinity degrees outside.
Yeah.
Can't have enough water.
Right. So we've got Dustin Huff in here, and we were talking about how you hunt now the past couple of years from what you used to do, and you wait to go in now. So I think I'm going to use the same principle, because I would, September 15th starts.
You'd be out there.
And every weekend.
Yeah.
Well,
all you're doing is blowing deer out.
And more cameras and more stands. And I started thinking back to when me and Sonia started hunting together, and we're 10 years ago now, 9 years ago. We used to see way more deer. And part of that, though, is us just not, the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll hold off this year.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Sneak in unexpected.
Yeah. So I'll put a few out, but a lot of it, too, is visual. And her dad lives close, too, so he kind of keeps an eye on.
Yeah.
He's like my own trail camera.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how many times do you hear deer stories about shooting this big buck at a place that they never go to, or it's just a brand new set they put out, and they just, they don't look back here, or they don't go back here, they never hunt this side, or whatever.
Or deer that randomly show up during a rut. That's the magic of the rut. Deer that you've never seen.
So, I've heard a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know there's some, sanctuaries that people create by accident and that you can tap into if you,
Right. Well, that one year that Beth has it hanging on her wall, it's a deer we never saw.
Yeah.
Ever. And we pull the trail camera cards and check them after that day's hunt. It was opening day of rifle. And we're flipping through, and that deer showed up 3 days before.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never seen it. We'd had trail cameras, thousands of pictures during the summer, early fall. Never seen it.
I got one deer last fall. It was November 20th, and he's a shooter buck. And I got 4 pictures of him one morning, a Thursday morning at 7 a.m. I've never seen him since.
It's like they set their own pattern.
Yeah.
And they just do their own thing.
He wasn't a local buck staying there by the farm. He was on a walkabout from Lord only knows where, but I got 4 pictures of him one morning, and I've never seen him again. So they do that.
Yep.
Do you use well, you were showing us some pictures, but do you put out a bunch of cameras or just not really?
Nope. I had one trail cam out for 2 weeks, the first week of October till about the 14th, and then took it down. I never put it back up.
Yeah.
But whenever I was in high school, I ran 2 or 3 on that farm. But I always felt like I would go to where the camera was. So now I just, I've killed enough deer on that property that I just go to where I kill deer or where my dad's killed deer, where I've seen the most deer. It's, once you hunt it long enough, you can try to pinpoint them deer, but bottom line, you got to get lucky and get them to walk by.
Yeah, I wonder if we over-scout too much.
And that's what I think, man. These past 2 years, I would come in third or fourth week of October, wouldn't touch the woods with cameras or nothing, and I've seen more deer the past 2 years than I've seen on that property ever, just by staying out of it.
Yeah. There's probably a correlation there.
Mm-hmm.
So you've heard, that was Dustin Huff you just heard. He's shot the largest typical deer last fall in 21 in the United States history. Largest white-tailed deer ever harvested in the U.S., which is crazy. So we'll let him talk a little bit about that more. We've got Chandler.
Yep.
And Patrick.
And Aaron.
Back. Yeah.
So that's this week's topic. I would say whitetail hunting, giant deer, and
Yeah, when this podcast released, it's it's getting close to you should be prepping, getting all your deer hunting stuff figured out as far as stands and archery equipment if you're starting early in the early September, mid-September days and whatnot.
waterfowl weekend's come and gone, and we're talking big bucks.
Yeah, so Dustin,
Yes.
I mean, deer hunters are probably going to know your name right off the bat, know your picture and everything, seen you on social media. But if we have a bunch of waterfowl guys listening, they might not know.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron just explained, the Huff buck and what you shot. Kind of go through just the buck, and then maybe we might start telling the story. Like if you're, starting, if you were going to write a book about it, kind of tell what happened and everything, because a lot of these guys might not have heard the story that's been out already.
Okay, so Moose, a.k.a. the Huff buck, scored 211 and 4/8 net typical. It's the number 2 in the world behind the Milo Hansen buck, which was in Canada, number 1 in the USA, which surpassed the James Jordan buck, and it held the 107-year reign U.S. record typical, and it broke that. So, yeah.
That's quite the reign ahead of your buck.
It's crazy.
So your name might be in the number 1 spot there in the U.S. for quite some time.
That would be nice.
That's crazy to think about that.
The last guy was there for 107 years.
Yeah, and that's why I just can't. I mean, it's just still so nuts to me.
So yeah, start out with that hunt that day, or what you're doing, just kind of so you can kind of lay the story out for everybody.
Yeah. So I hunted that morning, which I was hunting that whole week. But I'll just take you from that day. So November 4th morning, I got up in my set stand. Well, one of my set stands, it's a buddy stand, and I seen 8 or 9 deer that morning. It was a good morning. Never shot nothing. So I knew I was going to go back there that next morning. So I was already planning for November 5th because I seen 8 or 9 deer that morning. And that evening, well, I got out of the stand probably lunchtime, 12:30. So I hunted from dark to, morning till lunchtime, and went back, got a sandwich. And I wasn't, like I said, I was going to leave that set stand for the next morning. So this was just kind of I just took my climber out and threw it in the back of the Jeep and went to the woods. And I remember stepping out, and I just looked around, and I was like, man, do I go back to the Great Divide? Do I go back over to the east side? And I just decided I was going to go back to this old four-wheeler trail that I used to hunt when I was in high school. I used to hunt this pretty hard. I mean, it was a well-tracked four-wheeler trail, but now it's all grown up and logs all over it. But I decided to dip down in there. There's a nice little draw that comes up on this oak flat, and that's what I did. I dropped down over the creek, came up on that ridge. I didn't even know which tree I was going to go up in, and picked a tree, sawed off 2 limbs, and went up about 22 foot. And the whole time I was up there, I kept telling myself, I got to be 100 yards closer to that cornfield. There was a cornfield about 250 yards, and I was like, I got to be 100 yards closer to that cornfield. And I was telling myself the whole hunt. From when I got in there at 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was telling myself, I got to be up closer, and I'm glad I didn't. But I didn't see a deer from 3, 4, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock passes. And I'm getting texts from my girlfriend. I'm on day 7, 8. Like, any deer? Any deer? My dad's texting me, any deer? And as I was pulling out my phone, when my dad texted me, any deer, I was about texting back. Like, this is right as the sun hit the horizon. So, I mean, it's prime time. And, I got 20 minutes left, 15, 20 minutes left before I'm getting out. And pull my phone out, and I'm about to text him back, no deer. And I just did one last look around. And to my left, about 70 yards, I just see these antlers. Like they were glowing, dude. I didn't hear him. I didn't see him. He just appeared. Like it was the craziest thing. And so I see him, and he puts his head up, and that's when I go, oh, my gosh. That's whenever I knew. Like in my head, I'm thinking 180-inch deer, just because my biggest is 134-inch that I killed in 2020. So I had never seen a deer of this caliber in my life. And so right when I see him, like, I didn't know which way he was going to go. You know how it is. You're just waiting. Where's he going to go? And sure enough, he's coming right to me. It's like I had him on a string, man. And he's coming up this little tiny draw. There's a little like diversion ditch, and I was guessing it was 40 yards the whole time he was coming up. I mean, I'm watching him, and there's sapling trees all through. I mean, it's the thickest part of this. Where he's coming up is the thickest part, of course. And so I'm watching him, and I'm trying to pick a spot. I'm like, where am I going to shoot this deer at? How am I going to get? He's just walking through the woods, And I'm like, how am I going to get this deer? So I whistle at him, and like I said, I didn't even have time to range find him or nothing. And I guess 40 yards, and I'm looking right at him after that first whistle, and I can't shoot him. I mean, he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I got 2 or 3 saplings right in the boiler room. And I don't know how many seconds went in between of me looking at this deer and going, do I gut shot him? Do I try to catch a liver on the backside? I got to get an arrow in this deer. And so I don't know how long that was, seconds, a minute, I don't know. But I just told myself, a lot of self-talk. I was just like, one more step, and I'm going to whistle. If he doesn't stop, he's gone. He's starting to head west now. Like, I can tell he's taking the trail and heading straight to that cornfield that I was saying. So he's starting to quarter away a little bit, and he took that one more step, and I whistled again, and he looked back. But then he threw that left. Once he threw that right, he threw that left just a hair, and I had to lean to the left, and I just guessed 40 yards, put my top pin close to the top of his back, and all I heard was the smack. And I didn't even, like, there was so much adrenaline, and I felt like I blacked out. I always say it, but I'm telling you, like, it was so crazy. Like, I've shot a lot of deer, but this was just something different. Like, I didn't know where I hit him. I'm like, I know I put it right on him. And he ran about 50, 60 yards, and I'm just saying, go down, And he stops, and he's looking around, and I'm, go down. And when he started flicking his tail, and that's right when I knew. I was like, yep, he's going. Started doing the dance, flopped over in the holler that he came from, and I just put my hands up. I just went, let's go. And, oh, man, it was just – and at that time, I was thinking 170, 180-inch deer.
Mm-hmm.
But still
the biggest deer.
Deer of a lifetime.
Yeah, the biggest deer.
It's nice when you get to see him tip over.
Yes, exactly. Because I probably would have been even more shook up if I wouldn't have been able to see him go down, and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How are you? How was buck fever? How are you managing yourself in that tree,
dude?
Were you calm up until the shot?
I mean, I was calm, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I was shaking, but like, I've made that shot.
Autopilot.
I've shot. I know shot placement. I know how to shoot a deer, but it's like that was different. It was just like, because if I missed that thing, nobody would have believed me.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would have believed me. And so yeah, there was just for 3 days. That 3 days later, I was still shaking. The adrenaline was still. I mean, it's something that I can't even explain. Like how much of adrenaline was going on. And so, anyways, I watched him fall. I called my girlfriend right after from the stand. I called my dad, called the property owner and his boys, and we all, well, my girlfriend didn't, but my dad and the property owner, his boys, we all walked up to it together and was just like.
Now, at this point, did you tell him you shot a monster, or you just told him you shot a deer?
Yes, I told him it was the biggest deer I said, this has to be the biggest deer taken on this property. Like, I kept saying 170, 180-inch deer. Like, I was even pushing, like, 180, how am I saying that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, on this farm, there's no way that there's a 180-inch deer. And so even the property owner, I think I told you earlier, he come out there and I said, man, he's got to be a high 170s or 180-inch deer. And the property owner, he goes, nah, I'd say he's high 160s. And I was like, well, I'd say he's a little bigger than that. I've only had one deer scored, and that was in 2020, which was my 134-inch deer that I killed November 2nd of the 2020 year. I call it my COVID buck, named him Larry. But so that's the only thing I've had to go off of was a 134-inch deer. So this deer, I'm thinking, 180, heck,
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Now, this is a property you grew up hunting.
Yes.
Okay. So it wasn't a brand new property. It wasn't something you just got permission to hunt on the day before. It was a property you'd hunted for a while, but had never seen this particular buck before, or
Yep.
you had.
I haven't.
Okay.
Nope.
Never
So-
gotten pictures of him before, nothing.
Nothing. So my only history with him is that 2 minutes of whenever I first saw his antlers, and then he put his head up and started coming up my ridge. That's the only history I got. My neighbors could tell you a lot more stories about him because they were, they had him on different trail cams and Lucky Buck mineral sites and.
So your neighbors had known about this deer for a while.
Yeah, for a few years.
Okay.
Since he was a 3.5-year-old, I think is when they started getting pictures of him.
But this wasn't like people in the section. There was a rumor going around that there was a monster deer. Everybody was pretty low-key about this guy.
Yeah, because I had no idea. I
Yeah.
hunted that 2020 and that 2019 season. I had never heard about him.
And he on the property next door. And you
Yeah,
never knew
and I
about
had
it.
never even knew about him.
Now, you had been talking earlier about, just in our conversations, that he had been known to roam a little bit.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So right after I killed him, I think it was like a day or two later, this guy hit me up, and he was like, hey, man, it was on Facebook, and he was like, this is going to sound crazy, but I've been hunting that deer up here. It's almost in the next county. And I'm like, there is no way, I said, well, come on. He said, would you mind if I come down and, see him? I still had him in the walk-in cooler before I took him to a taxidermist. And sure enough, he comes over and he goes, that's him. He starts showing me all of his trail cam pics that he had of him, from him as a 4.5, him as a 3.5. And I mean, it's crazy. It was 8 miles away, a little over 8 miles away of where his property is. He was on like a 90 to 100 acre property. And so, but he was only getting him December, January, February, and never got him. So he was going deer hunting, during deer season, thinking he's hunting this deer. He's actually 8 miles on my neighbor's property, the property I hunt, and, around that, my county,
Haven't you heard that before? Like, hey, November comes around and all my bucks are gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy
Happens
to think.
to me every year.
Well,
Seems like it happens to everybody.
and that's the thing, too. I've set out trail cameras before where you get all these velvet bucks, and you see them all summer long. They shed the velvet, and then, boom, you don't see them anymore. Same thing. I've been out deer hunting, and I or friends have shot deer that we've never seen except during the rut. Well, it sounds like this guy, he had his winter grounds that when it got brutal cold, he had his own little spot he liked to go to during that December, January, February time frame. So
Yep.
It's crazy what deer like to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we can set trail cams out and try to pinpoint them and all this, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what a deer's going to do, and that's go wherever they want to go.
And I think realistically, the only thing you can count on is nothing. Well,
Just
really,
being in the woods.
yeah, you got to be in the woods. But I think unless you're getting pictures of a deer the week you plan on hunting, that's really about it. Because if you see something in September or August that looks amazing, you may not see it come bow season. Or if you see something later in the year, it may not be around. So I couldn't tell you how many people, friends included, that have seen pictures of deer in the morning, and they're like, okay, boom, I've got to go hunt that stand this evening or the next morning, and then they end up shooting it. But unless you're seeing that deer right up into game time, I mean, gosh, 8 miles away, that's crazy. We've gotten pictures of deer a couple miles away, and neighbors have too, but 8,
it's crazy. Even the sheds from the year before, the 2020, when he was in 11, somebody found those sheds even farther than 8 miles away.
really.
Yep. Almost 9 miles. It was like 8.6, I think.
Well, they're going to have a story.
Yeah, so he brought those sheds to I was at the Indianapolis Expo.
Did they score them?
Yep. So it scored 177. They gave him a 20-inch spread, so 197 is what he was as a 4.5-year-old 11-pointer.
Now, what's the spread on him now?
He was 21.5.
Okay, so they
gave him an inch off the year before. And
So yeah, he was still on the increase, because what was the final score? 211.
4.8, and that's
Okay.
net. He was 216 and 2.8 gross, and then net.
It's pretty typical. I mean,
Yeah, he only
5-inch of deductions.
Yeah, and that's so. And then he had that one kicker that was like a inch and an eighth or so. Yeah, it's just crazy because
And
like everything comes within eighths on each tine.
Jeez.
And you brought up that kicker. You take away that kicker,
It's close.
we're like right there with
The Hanson?
Yes.
The world record.
Yeah, it's right. If it would have been real close, is what they were saying. But I don't know.
I mean, who?
Yeah, who knows? But
Yeah.
Before we go into like post harvest, because I think some little bit of excitement and chaos going on there, trying to figure out. You just shot this huge deer, and in your mind, you thought it was 180, and you still couldn't believe that. Anything about that day? Like we're using, I think there's a product that you were using, but like you were using, I think Heat Wave.
Yeah, Heat
was
Wave.
something that you were using, and do you think that really helped potentially any scenario, or was it a calming style of strategy, or was it a attractant style of strategy?
I think it was a calming because he had no idea I was even there. He was just walking through the woods like nothing was wrong.
Yeah.
And even when I whistled at him that first time, he wasn't worried about it. It was on that second whistle when he was just kind of like, "What the heck's going on?" But yeah, it definitely covered my where.
And you had good wind. You had the right wind for you.
Yep, for my scent, but.
Just that Heat Wave out there, which if you don't know is a warming deer attractant or something. It's you can do all the different flavors, I guess.
Yeah, they do. Multiple. All the ones that you would want. They do the estrus. They do a scrape.
Yeah, which has different deer urine on the scrape talker.
Right. Mm-hmm. They do a calming, or they're soothing. Calming, soothing.
Yeah, the mama doe is.
And they do. They even do some predator style stuff. And then they do, for the guy or gal that's out there that, likes their brand or they whatever, they do make a
just the warming kit.
They make a warming kit, which is great. It still gives you an opportunity to utilize what they've brought to the table.
It's a pretty neat product. The whole thing on the heat and
Yeah, it's really cool to see it with the thermal camera and how it actually
heats up
reacts.
to a deer's temperature.
Yeah, I always equate it to
a hand warmer, basically.
Yeah,
chemically activated because it's
the oxygen.
vacuum sealed in the package, and you open up that package and break the seal like a chemical hand warmer, and the air gets to it and it starts getting warm.
Doesn't matter how cold it is because the air temperature is gonna. But I always equate it for someone. It's like, okay, so what are they saying? You preheat your oven and you put your raw cookie dough in there, you don't smell anything. But you kind of know when it's about done because it's heating up and that permeates the smell. And then you're like, I smell cookies now.
Like cold pie, hot pie.
Hot pie, right?
Yep.
You can smell it. Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to, so I don't forget that I like that you brought up is, we talked about over scouting and trail cameras and all that. And you were talking about getting used to going, my trail cameras are right here, so I want to set up right here. And you don't realize all these other places, and you get so zoned in on one spot instead of, the totality of your property and maybe these other areas that, you should look at or like hunting the edges. How many people have hunted, I want to be right on the edge of the cornfield. Well, by the time you see the deer,
it's after shooting light.
It's after shooting light.
Yep.
Well, you want to try to get between the field and their bedding area or wherever they're coming from, which is probably what happened with you. If you would have been on the edge of that field.
Yep. It might have been too late
by
the time he got
by the time he made it.
That would have been a
That's
terrible
true
story.
because that is right where he was heading to. And it would have took him, who knows.
Right.
No,
if you're
no
on
one would believe you. You'd be like, I saw the biggest deer
That's what,
after shooting light. Right under my stand.
Did you?
That would be terrible.
Now,
he was right under me.
You said the whole time you were in the tree, you were thinking, I need to be 100 yards closer to that field. Did it ever cross your mind to actually climb down and move closer?
Yeah, because I got in about 3 o'clock afternoon, so I had time. But that first hour, I was just – and then once 5 hit, I was like, I knew I should have – 6 hit. I knew I should have been up there because, it's starting to get –
And you hadn't seen a deer.
And then about 6:30, 6:35 is whenever he appeared.
And you don't see anything that evening. Say you don't see him, and you just took your climber. You were planning on hunting that other set that
the next morning.
You might have never
–
known. Just the off chance, I wanted to hunt here. And
he would have walked by there, and I could have not been sitting there and
Mhm.
and
knows
still
what
would have
would've
been the
happened.
unknown
Yeah.
deer that you never knew about.
But you took a climber or something? Or?
Yep.
Yep. And you just said this was like, I'm just gonna go on this 4-wheeler path I haven't hunted since you were in
High
high
school.
school.
Yep.
You're
Me
just
and-
like, I'm just gonna go this way.
Yep, it was a good evening, and that it's on the west side of the farm, and I usually leave that part, since high school. I've just left that for the deer, and then I hunt that east side, or I go to the north side of the farm across the hog barns, and then there's a bunch of fingers through the fields, and I'll hunt on that other side. But I usually leave that because I said it's pretty thick back there, and but it's the best place where you can watch a sun drop, and that's pretty much that was like my reason of picking that spot was like. It was about 50, 55 that afternoon. It was I was just in a sweatshirt, and I was like, I'm going to go watch that sunset, And sure enough.
Jeez.
Have you seen a better sunset since?
I have not. I'm going to go back to that same tree November 4th
You got to.
this coming
Yeah.
season
Why not?
yeah.
That brings up another point. If you had one 7-day window to hunt, when are you bow hunting? When are you going to sit in the woods, Chandler?
I'm
you
trying to
answer
decide.
first.
I'm trying to decide where I put Halloween. I'll put Halloween on day 3. So however that breaks up my my 3 days and then my 4 days after.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would do Halloween weekend, but I would probably go the 31st of October through the November
6th, 7th.
6th, 7th.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, for me.
For you. Dustin, where you at?
Well, I'm with him. I was so when I got in, I was October 29th, that Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I hunted Friday, Saturday, Sunday was Halloween. I killed a doe that morning. My nephew, he's 7, he killed his first buck. And so, yeah, that's my go-to week now, which in the year before I did that same thing. And then on November 2nd, I killed that 134. So that's my new go-to week from the 29th through that.
We joke about it here at work, but like Halloween is just a magical night.
Well,
Yep.
2 years ago, I shot a great 11 point
On Halloween night.
Yeah, so I would have to include Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I would jump forward a day or two. So I might start Halloween and run through like the 6th, but I know the last couple days of October and then the first week in November, if you had vacation to take, that's a great time to take it. I really think I might even start October 28th, 29th, and then run through like November 6th or 7th.
Yep.
So it might be a little outside of a week, maybe 8 or 9 days, but man, that's that right in there. That's the way to do it. So I
And
think we're all
suppose
in
it would
agreement there.
Depend on the property you're at. So at least for me too, that week or two, and of course Missouri has changed. Their rifle season now is later in the month than it used to be.
Mid-November.
You're about mid-November. Is when we get to at least where we hunt and rifle season hits. After that opening weekend, it is tough
It is
on
tough.
our property.
Now, one thing
So that's
I have,
why I like the
I have
earlier.
found in Missouri, though, the weekend after Thanksgiving can be good, too, because
Yes.
it's given deer a couple weeks to chill out. And I have found that a lot of times those does that don't get bred that first rut, that's when they're going to cycle. Sometimes you'll get some young does to cycle that last weekend of November, first week into December that were born in June. Sometimes if they were early deer born, they might cycle then. But I don't know. I'm still banking my vacation on that first week of November.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The biggest deer I've ever seen or had the not always the biggest, but the most deer in the action has been Halloween weekend. So I always want to make sure I'm out there. And for us now, at least at the store, being off Sunday, Monday. So if it's that 2 days that, I got to be out there
Yeah.
somewhere.
That's when I see the most chasing, and I see the most or different bucks that week.
Sure.
Bucks that I've never seen or, just multiple bucks.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times, too, you start getting into the Missouri gun season, you're starting to hit some of the lockdown of the rut. And I know that you have to contend with the youth rifle season now for that prime time. Missouri has that youth rifle season, which is usually right around Halloween. So a lot of big deer go down that weekend. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I have my own set of thoughts on that, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Do you have, so like you talked about, this place that you went that you haven't hunted forever, just kind of on the whim, but I mean, does each person have a crazy stand that they've set up, or or like in the middle of the season, you're like, man, I want to hunt right here. And it's just something out of the blue and weird that like for me, I been watching deer all year, and you start patterning them, and they keep crossing right there at the road, because the farm where we hunt is split with the road that goes between it, and the easiest path is timber to timber, and they cross the road right there. I kept watching them over and over, and I'm like, I'm gonna put a stand right there. And I've probably told you guys this, but I hung a stand on lunch 5 yards off the road. I mean, I'm on just off the ditch, and shot one with my bow that evening. So it's just kind of a wild stand that, it's like, no one would have thought about hunting on the road.
You were telling me about that at Mexican the other night, and you said you can turn and wave to the cars driving by.
I do. I mean, if they happen to look up, I try not to hunt it too much when I'm rifle hunting, because it's kind of weird, and I'm in orange, and then they really see me.
Yeah.
But, I just you start patterning deer, and I'm hunting on the other side of the field, and I just kept watching them all day.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
I got to be over there.
Every deer crossed right there.
You're thinking about, I want a doe for the freezer, so guess what?
So I grabbed a hang on, put it up, and oddly enough, the deer I shot, so it was a buck. It was, okay size for me. I was excited. We were talking about getting excited.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, but it happened to be on the other side, and we all have text, me and the wife and then the brother-in-law, and it had passed them, and I hear Sonya rattling and grunting, and I pull up my binos, and I can see it running through the field on their side of the farm, way far away, but it's coming to cross the road. And as it gets to the road, they slow down because they want to see what's going on. Most deer do before they actually cross. I pull out my rattling antlers and, and he just strutted down the gravel road and walked right underneath me. It was done and over with.
And that's another thing. You bring up another good point, talking about getting excited. I think in the past 15 years or so, there's been a lot of stigma put on, well, if you don't shoot a deer XYZ scoring points and this big or this old, that, what are you doing out there? And a lot of shaming on social media, especially for people who shoot maybe like a 115 or 120. And I think you just mentioned a good point, getting excited. To me, if you see a buck that walks by you and you get all jacked up and you're shaking and you're excited, I don't care if it's 95 inches. I don't care if it's 195 inches. If it gets you jacked up, shoot that thing.
Yeah, I don't care if it's a doe.
I still get all jacked up shooting a doe. I get I can see deer all around me, and I'm fine. But as soon as I'm like, you know what, I may shoot that doe, I start getting all jacked up.
That heart starts beating a little bit.
Yeah, as soon as I make the decision, man, I'm all jacked up. I love shooting deer.
I've set in plenty sets. I've filmed a little bit out of a tree and stuff. You sit around and you stare at deer all day, and then all of a sudden it's like click, hey, you're gonna take one. And you're like, and then just a different thing happens.
Mm-hmm. I try to tell myself that, especially when I know, okay, I want to take a doe now, and we're beyond. Because sometimes you take a doe and it's like, well, especially during the rut or something, that's probably not a great time to take a doe, but if you want to, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But so I always tell myself before I go, all right, if I see a doe tonight, I'm shooting it.
Yep.
That way I know going in, because I got to psych myself up and get ready. That way when it happens, and I'm pretty calm during that. I get excited when I see them. Whether it's a doe or a buck, and I know I'm going to shoot. And then I calm myself down, and I'm rock solid. But once that arrow flies or I pull the trigger, I'm gone.
Don't know what happened.
I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where I hit it. I don't know where it ran.
It felt like a good shot.
Yeah.
But did I hit it? I didn't see my arrow.
Sure.
Like how many times you release perfect, and you're just like,
yeah,
I thought I hit it like right in the boiler
and it runs
room.
150 yards, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then
and then you go, retrieve it, and you're like, yeah, I hit it right where I wanted to. It just ran a little bit farther that time.
And turkey hunting, I know you do. And you're talking about, are you a stand guy only, or climbers, or ground blinds, or?
I do. So I got lock-ons, I got buddy stands, and I use my climber mostly. I feel like I always go find different trees a lot. So that, me going to that spot was like out of the blue, but it's not out of the blue for me to go, I'm going to take my climber out and go to the and just find a brand new tree, and saw off saplings around, cut me some lanes, and go up. So I've done that many times, but
I've hunted out of some ground blinds every now and again. You do it a lot, obviously, turkey hunting, but I didn't know if you did it during deer season ever.
Yeah, the one I shot in Halloween 2 years ago was ground blinds. Where I hunt out in Kansas were a lot of field edges and stuff, but they're way off the beaten path. So we'll have the
Gotcha.
blinds out starting, mid-August. So they're sitting there. They're plenty of time. We put them in the same spots where they've been year after year. The deer are kind of accustomed to them where they're at. But I would say ladder stands and ground blinds is pretty much what I'm at, just because a lot of the hang-ons, well, one, they're small. Two, I'm not a huge fan of just strapping straps to a tree. I don't like to really use screw-in steps personally.
Yep.
Climbers, I've got one. I just don't use it enough because you got to find the opportunistic tree. And it seems like even with hang-ons, a lot of the properties I hunt, there's just a lot of not really good, straight, decent trees. They're, either huge where you're going to need 3 ratchet straps to get around the thing, and or they're just not a great tree. But a ladder stand, it doesn't matter if it's the perfect tree or not. You can kind of situate those in there. And, again, blinds, I feel like you don't get winded near as much in a blind, obviously. And so you can get away with a little bit more. You can, as far as scent and or movement, and snacks. I'm a big fan of snacks.
Yes.
So I feel like I can get away
snacks
with
in the woods.
more in a ground blind.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I'll bring a cream pie sandwich or a cookie or something, but it's super cold.
Oh, yeah.
So then when I go to get it, it's rock solid.
That's the best, though.
Yeah.
I'm like, now it's an ice cream
Yeah.
sandwich.
And of course, I don't know about you guys, but during like the rut or like when you were out, I like to sit all day.
Yep.
My only problem is I never take enough food, so I'm like, okay, I got my lunch packed, and by 8:30 my lunch is gone.
Yep.
And I'm like,
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
all right.
You've
We're
had
not
your
even-
breakfast and lunch.
Yeah, we're not even to 10 o'clock yet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I'm usually getting out at noon, going and getting a sandwich, and then coming back about
Yeah.
2:30.
Well, see, and that brings me to another point. The best deer I've shot and some of my friends have shot have been between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Yeah.
So during the rut, not only do I like to sit all day, but like I go into like hyper focus 10 to 2.
Yeah.
Because I've shot multiple bucks between 10 and 2. I've had some friends that I've been setting with them filming. Shot one at like 12:03. Like I don't know. What are your thoughts on deer movement in the middle
Yeah.
Oh,
of the day?
I've definitely seen that as well.
Now, not necessarily out on like a field edge, but if you're in a
No.
good travel corridor,
Travel drainage.
waterfowlers can relate it to like hunting traffic. Like if you're in a good spot where there's a high traffic area, man, I'd love to be in a funnel or along a fence line, an interior fence line in the woods, man. Oh man, and that
I like
chasing
to sit
phase.
as long as possible. I get hungry.
Yes,
That's
and I
me.
don't have enough food.
Yep.
So inevitably, and this has happened multiple times, we break for lunch. I come back, and it's happened to me numerous times. A decent buck or just deer in general, they're right where
Your stand is?
Jump them up.
right where I need to go.
yeah.
Yep.
I've had that happen.
And I'm like,
So Pat,
if I would, so lesson learned, one, pack 3 days of food.
yes.
Yeah.
For one
Not
day.
just one day.
I was going to say, if you need to get like a mountain hauler or some 60,
I know I need
60
the 16, the Sitka, the
6400,
4,000.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cubic inch pack. Do what you got to
Get you a
do.
portable microwave out there.
Right. And a phone will keep you busy too. Although
Yeah.
I've been caught doing that.
Yeah.
Have you ever been on your phone
And
all
yeah.
of a sudden you hear a deer blow at you? And you're like, I was just looking over there, and then that's the worst sound
Yep.
in the world in the woods is getting blown at, and you're like, you're caught.
Yeah.
And you slowly turn, and sure enough, they're looking at you.
I don't usually get on my phone too much, but there's been times where I've been sawing logs, and I hear footsteps underneath me, and I look, and I'm like, I don't even know what to do right now.
Yep.
Because there's a deer, and I'm sawing logs, but one opportunity I've been completely busted, and another opportunity I waited for the deer to literally walk under my tree and get past me about 10 yards and then shot it. But
Yeah.
it was a decent 9-point. But yeah, I've been woken up several times.
Oh, yeah.
The first, no, it wouldn't have been the first. Well, the first decent buck I ever shot with my bow, I was caught with my rattling antler because I had rattled him in. And it's like out of the blue. I got charged. I'm only like 12 feet in the tree. which is a whole nother discussion, how high you need to be in the tree. But,
Yeah.
but I'm not very high up there. And I'm sitting over a bluff, and I'm rattling. I just hear, and before I could even set him down, he's standing 2 yards underneath me. And my bow's still hanging. Like, well, what do I do?
Do with my hands.
Do I
Well,
catch
yeah,
it?
exactly. So I mean, it was a decent one. So I had to wait until he started turning, because he stops underneath me, and he even kind of looks at me, and I just freeze. And he's just staring up at my tree. But once he turns to start walking away, he walked and didn't run, and I was able to set him down. But yeah, I've been caught red-handed before.
Rattling is my favorite thing about deer hunting in October, November.
Yep.
I've seen it turn the woods on so many times, and just it's so exciting when you're at that peak time for it all to work.
I don't think I've ever rattled in a big deer. I've rattled in lots of 2-year-olds that are like
Yeah.
teenagers that just get all excited and they want to see the commotion, but I don't think I've ever rattled
Yeah, I
in
mean,
a
you
big
do.
deer.
Yeah, I definitely younger deer, but every once in a while you get some decent ones coming to check it out, and they don't really run in charging. They're always kind of
They come check it.
they come check it, and they're not immediate either too. But you know they're kind of cruising through, just making sure everything's going all right. There's one story with Dave from the store. Years ago, he didn't like to get super high in his climber, and I think he was rattling or something. A deer was running by, and the climber has backpack straps hanging from the bottom of his stand, and I swore that buck running under his stand was going to get hung up in his backpack straps on his climber
Because it was so low.
Because it was so low. It was so close. I mean, we were hunting. We probably should have been hunting farther away from each other, but we were a couple hundred yards, but I could still see him, and I could see that deer, and it was a young buck, but I thought it was going to get hung up in his backpack straps with his climber.
That
Catch an
reminds me-
antler.
Yeah.
Just flip him.
The first,
Choke him out.
Yeah.
the first time I used a climber, I tried it out and got the basic idea in a tree in a backyard, but the first time I ever took it out into the woods and used it, I strapped it to a tree, and I'm like, okay, I got the hang of this. I've climbed a few feet before. I know what I'm doing, so I get all situated. I got my bow strapped in and my backpack and everything on a pull-up line, and I start climbing, and I'm like, all right, I'd say this is probably pretty good. My stand's leveled out now. I'm good. I feel comfortable. I pull everything up, and it starts to get daylight, and I'm about 9 feet off the ground. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Let's try
that's what
this
I was
again.
getting to on
Yeah.
the height thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got my uncle's brother-in-law. He wants to be 30, 40 feet. I swear, he's been over 30 feet before.
I've
I
been
do.
there.
Mhm.
I do in gun season,
Okay, so
but
you
bow
you
season
hunt
20
super
to
high.
25.
But it's always like, okay, 20 minimum. With a hang on, I like to be 20. A lot of ladder stands I have, though, they don't go to 20, so you're 17, 18. But I mean, I understand it, but I think there's like the deer I shot. I mean, if you're in the right wind and you're using scent control and the opportunity's still there,
Yeah.
even if you're 10 feet in the air.
Sure, and I think every opportunity is different too. Because if like southern Indiana, where you're at, or up north Missouri, there's a lot of bluff country. So a lot of times you're going to be high on one side of the hill if you're on a ridge or something, and then low on the other side. But
Yeah.
I think, like you say, bow hunting,
Yeah.
especially, you got to think about the trajectory of that arrow. You're super high. You may just one lung a deer and that's it, which
Right.
sometimes is fatal, sometimes not.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
the lower you are, obviously you don't want to be 8 feet off the ground, but I
Right.
mean, the lower you are, you're going to get a better shot and more vitals. But with a gun, it doesn't matter so
Yeah.
much because there's so much impact and damage done with a bullet. There's going to be lethal consequences to that. But yeah, with a bow, I don't know. I'd say I like that 18 to 20 foot range is about where I'm
I've
good
definitely
with
been
it.
up there. I mean,
Oh yeah.
maybe disclaimers, don't recommend anything. I mean, I was strapped into a tree, but there was times on a climber that I was still strapped into the tree, safe about it, but I would pull up the bottom part of my stand because it was starting to flatten out, and I would tighten the stand below my feet all the way, at that 45-degree angle and keep going. The top part of the stand's easy to adjust on the
yeah.
fly, but the bottom part's not. So I'd
Yeah.
be dangling. I'd be sitting on
Yep.
top part of the stand. I'm strapped in, but I'm sitting on the top part of the climber, pulling up the bottom part. The bottom part is connected. It's not going to go, very far,
Mm-hmm.
because all this stuff is good for climbers. But I'm bringing it up and tightening it just so I can get, 25 foot up in the air. Some of that was because of the brush around. I had to get a little bit higher to get a little bit more shooting lanes, but I best, and then hanging double sets
Oh yeah.
for filming, like double hang on sets. We Dave, Dave has actually been, managing some big, nice whitetail properties, and he does now get over 20 foot. I'm pretty sure in a tree stand. So I'll make sure I don't. That was just years ago. He was getting 12 foot off the ground, but now he's up there. But I think Dave was talking about some of the double sets we used to hang, and it was a 20 foot quick stick, another Ameristep 4 foot section, then a hang on, and then another 4 foot section, and then the top filmer stand was up above that. That was a typical double hang on set for us, which was, the camera guy was up there by the time he got up there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, the new thing to add to your arsenal now, which is it's super popular now over the past couple of years, is the saddle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been
And
seeing that.
So at the store now we offer trophy line, and we've got tethered coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's your sole deal, but I'd love to have one to add to my arsenal, especially you're talking about. I wish I was 100 yards there, and there is times I'm in the tree, but all my stands are permanent sets for the season. I don't want to go buy a new one. You got a saddle with you. Hey, I need to be 15 yards that way. It might be that far, and you don't have to worry about sawing branches like with a climber, and you just up you go.
Mm-hmm.
Or great for public land hunters.
Yeah,
it's super lightweight. Your saddle, which is few pounds,
Yeah.
and then just set of sticks.
Yeah. So let's kind of get back on track with the Huff buck here. 'Cause that we kind of go all over the place, but when you're talking hunting and deer hunting, I could go
You start telling
20
stories.
directions.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
So you call your dad, your girlfriend, you get a hold of everybody, they come find the deer. What is the rest of that evening and the days, leading out of, hey, I just shot a giant deer, but I don't know what I've got at this point?
Yeah, so that evening, once I started sending Snapchats to my buddies, so that's all I did. I didn't post it until the next day. So that evening, I just sent it to some buddies, and all my buddies are big deer hunters, but I got about 2 of them that, they got target bucks every year. All my buddies were meat hunters. We've always we shoot whatever comes by, or, we've gotten better at, I've started shooting the 134 and then trying to work myself up. But so my 2 buddies, they texted me and called me and said, put the knife down. Because shoot, me and my dad were ready to, we were going to cut him up at night. Shoot, we were ready to get the back straps out of him, And my buddy Blake was like, put the knife down. I'll be over there in 20 minutes. And so him and my buddy Balzer come over. We're drinking beers, and they knew right when I sent that picture that it was a 200-inch deer. They just knew it because they study deer all the time, and so they knew right away that it was pretty special. So they come over, and I'm saying 180, and they're like, I'm telling you. So then my buddy Blake started putting a tape on it and got his number, which was really close to what the official scorer got. I was like, dang, Blake, you should start being a scorer,
Yeah.
And so we knew that evening that it was possibly an Indiana state record with what my buddy Blake had come up with on the numbers. And so at that point, he's saying, you need to call a photographer. And I'm start laughing at him. I'm like, because I use a photographer for my music and my album covers and stuff. And so he's like, I was cracking up, dude, you're crazy. I'm not taking any pictures of this deer. I got plenty in the woods, And he's like, I'm telling you, dude, this is a huge deal. And I'm still laughing about it. I think he's nuts, And so that happens. We just hang him up at night. We take a bunch of pictures, just drinking beer downstairs. And it wasn't until late that night. I kept getting up, and I couldn't sleep. I was just Googling Indiana. I hadn't even Googled the U.S. record or anything. I had never kept track of that. Well, I got a text from I made a tweet late that night. It was midnight or so. I couldn't sleep, so I made a tweet and said, I think I killed the biggest deer in Indiana. And that's all I said, ... No picture, nothing. Well, my buddy, Ray Fulcher, who I used to be on the road with, he's on the road with Luke Combs. Well, we all used to run together. I used to ride with Luke and was on the road with him in my early 20s, did some touring with him. And so after I sent Ray texted me after seeing my tweet and said, "Oh, Huff, let me see this deer that you tweeted about." I sent him 2 or 3 pictures, and within 2 minutes, Combs is calling me. And at this time, it's like 2 a.m. I assume that they were on bus call, because usually our bus call was like 2 o'clock in the morning whenever we were leaving a venue. And he calls me, he goes, "Bubs." And that's what because I was always the youngest guy on the tour, so he always called me Bubs. And he said, "Bubs, like, you don't know what you did." And I just said, "Yeah, I think it might be the Indiana state record." He goes, "I'm going to get you in touch with some people." He said, "Don't post nothing yet." So I didn't post any photos that night. That next morning, he called me again and said, "Hey, Meat Eater's going to call you." He called Meat Eater because he was just on Ranella's show and shot that antelope.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he was just on it. So he had just got that connection. Well, then he called them, and he knew there was going to be, stuff like I didn't know anything about, any deer shows or anything, So he called Meat Eater. Meat Eater called me. They launched the story, and after that, it just kind of blew up. Then everybody started calling after they released it on their website, and yeah.
What were the articles saying about released by them at that time?
It was saying this buck might crush the Indiana state record.
So it was still claiming like state record.
It was just saying state. We weren't even thinking USA.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like later on, it was like later that night I was looking at, or that next day I was looking up. I just decided, world record buck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's whenever I started seeing Milo, 213, and James Jordan, 208. And what my numbers that I'm getting off my buddy is bigger than, and I said, and my dad's in the living room, and I said, "Dad, I think we have like a top 2 deer in the world." And he goes, "Get out of here, man." He goes, "There's no way," and I'm just like, from what Google's saying, we have, it's going to be close to the biggest deer in the world. And my dad just was like, "There is no way." We just couldn't believe it. And sure enough, it was pretty dang close.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it finished. So Milo's was what, 2 inches?
Yeah, inch and a half. He was an inch and a half because he was 213.
Yeah.
211 and a half and my kicker. So if it was
dang kickers.
Yep,
Yeah.
I know it. Where's my chisel at?
Exactly.
I needed a chisel at
But
the
to
time.
come within an inch and a half of the
World
the
record,
most storied
Yeah.
buck maybe ever out there,
Exactly.
and to take down the U.S. record was 107
107.
years old. So
well, North American Whitetail. So they contacted me after, Meat Eater, and they said hypothetically, judging or basing it off of like how many Boone and Crockett's are killed every year in the United States and Canada and Mexico don't even have like a Boone. They don't even have Boone and Crockett. They don't even get scored down there. So he was saying that hypothetically, me killing a deer that big and that typical was 1 in 321 millionth of a chance to shoot a deer that big.
Did you go buy a lottery ticket?
That was, well, that's what I mean. I'm out of luck now. Yeah. That's it. He said you could have got struck by lightning twice before killing that deer.
when does it come
I'll take
out?
the deer.
Yeah.
Yes, same. Me too.
But even those articles were coming out, okay, I think we've, got the new state record. But when does it come out where it's like, hey, this is even a bigger deal? Or who writes about that? Or how do you...
You obviously have to wait for
There's
a
that window,
drying
like
period.
the green score and then
Yeah.
all that stuff.
So,
I mean, explain some of that.
I had the green score, so you have to wait 60 days for that drying period is what they call it. And so during that time, I'm just, freaking out of, is it going to hold up? All this. I didn't know much about it because, I'd never had to wait on a score. I've only scored one deer in my life, and that was the 2020 buck. And so, yeah, we just kind of waited the 60 days and got a veteran scorer on it, a guy that was scoring. He was a master scorer, for Boone and Crockett. He's been scoring for like 40 years, and
it's just one guy?
It
You
was
didn't
just
have
one-
like
yeah.
3 guys get it, and they all kind of collaborate and figure out what they
Yeah.
decide on. It's just
And
one
he-
guy,
it was
one
just
Did he
score.
come out to your place?
yeah,
And
he
then-
came down. Yep.
And when he scores it and he finishes, he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
you've got this is.
Yeah, this is what it scored, and we're just like
And did he tell you then you've got the biggest buck in the
in the
country?
U.S. Yeah. Yep. He was like, "Congratulations, you have the biggest deer in the United States," and I just go, I couldn't say nothing. I was just like, huh? You know?
Right.
What do you say at that point? Now, I'm guessing up until this point, most everything that had come your way was pretty positive. When you started posting pictures on social or word started getting out, was there any negativity to come your way?
Oh yeah. There was
always of course.
Yeah, man. There was a lot of, he poached it. It was a high fence deer. It was this and that. There was people calling into DNR saying, "Oh, there's no way that this guy killed this deer here," and blah blah blah. And
Did they come visit you,
oh,
DNR?
2 times. Oh yeah, I had.
Really?
Oh, my
Oh
gosh.
yeah. So it was a big thing. But so there's that, and then there's just people talking. Well, he used a crossbow, so it don't count, or just stuff like that. But the accusations of poaching or shooting it with a 223 at midnight, like there was. I mean, these DNR they were getting calls from all over the place saying like, he shot it on this property. He wasn't even allowed to be on that property. And
So when the DNR showed up, what'd you have to do?
well, they actually called me. So I was in Nashville. So like I said, I travel back and forth. So I went down there for 3 or 4 days to write songs, and I had to record a song. And so I get which I called. Let me backtrack. So the next day when Meat Eater talked to me, they said, "I advise you to call your local DNR." Well, I called DNR the day after I shot it. And the lady that picked up, the dispatcher, I was like, "Hey, ma'am," I was like, "I killed the biggest deer in Indiana. Who do I need to talk to?" And she thought I was nuts. She was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." She's like, "You need to go online and fill out these forms." I'm like, well, that wasn't no help. So anyways, they
might get that call quite often.
Yeah. So so I was trying to get a hold of a DNR officer like that next day, but nothing. So I'm back in Nashville that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I come home on Thursday. Well, DNR calls me on Wednesday saying, "Hey, we're at your house. Where you at?" Well, I'm at my producer's. I'm down, recording songs and writing songs. And, well, when you going to be back? I said, well, I'll be back tomorrow or the next day. And they said, well, we're going to go check out where you shot that deer. I said, that's fine. I said, okay, they knew where the property was. And so me and this DNR officer are texting back and forth aerial maps, and he's circling where he's at and showing me. And I said, I circled where my gut pile should be, and where my tree is. And sure enough, they found what was left of the gut pile, found my tree, and they said, "Did you saw off 2 limbs on your way up?" "Yep, that's the one." They found my tree. They even found where the splatter was from the deer, where it was standing on the sapling trees. Because I said it was over by the sapling trees, and they said they found where the splatter was.
Was the property owner out there with them to help, or?
So when they showed up the second time.
Okay.
So that was the first time, and they, called me. I said, "Did you find it?" "Yep, it's all here, blah, blah. I think we're good." Well, about 2 weeks go by. I get another call. "We got some follow-up questions." I said, "Oh, great. Here we go. All right." If I would have shot a 140, there would have been no, you know. So I said, all right. And I was home. I didn't go back to Nashville that week. And so I said, well, come on over. I said, I'd love to just sit down and talk with y'all. Give you a cup of coffee and we'll just sit down and talk. And so, yeah, they come up and they're just like, yeah, we just keep getting calls, man. Like, I'm like, who are these? Where are these people getting these stories from?
Exactly.
It's
Do
like,
they have nothing better to do?
and that's the thing. Like, and even like during this period, I'm getting calls from my buddy saying, "You'll never guess what so and so said at work. That you don't even own those antlers no more. Blah blah blah. Like the DNR took them from you." And I'm like, I'm looking at my antlers right now. Like, so all these rumors are flying.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, DNR comes back over, and I just take them from just like I tell everybody, and he said, well, we're just getting a lot of, calls. And they even went and talked to the property owner saying that, well, did he even have permission to hunt here? And the property was like, that boy's been hunting my property since he was 10 years old. and he'll always have permission to hunt this property. I don't know where you're getting all these stories from. So he shut it down pretty quick to them. Like, and after that second visit, they realized that it was a legal kill, and they said, "Well, do you got the antlers?" And I went downstairs, got them, and we all took pictures together, and finally squashed it. But it was just like, man, they got nothing better to do.
No.
Do you think it's because
It's jealousy.
Well,
It's
well,
jealousy.
one, yeah, and a deer of that magnitude, irregardless, you don't see that.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Which I think is where a lot of the high fence comes
Yes.
in.
Mm-hmm.
Any deer that's 200 or big, it's got to be high
Yeah,
fence.
he's paid
Because
20
you don't
grand for it.
you
or
don't
something.
see that,
Mm-hmm.
and it is rare, even in the wild. The genetics to
Yeah.
grow that big, even if you take some of these outdoorsmen that work by age, and they're passing deer at 4.5, sometimes 5, and they're letting them grow, and even then they don't even reach 200.
That's crazy.
So to actually see one,
Well, it's a genetic freak
in
of nature,
person.
that's for
Yeah.
sure.
yeah,
And-
and so I think there is some doubt, and it's okay to make sure everybody does it legally,
Mm-hmm.
but the visceral and the hate that comes
Oh,
out
man.
of it, we just tear each other down as hunters, and I can't believe it.
Oh,
like
man.
where we're heading.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, and that's the thing, going back on the crossbow and compound bow. And, dude, I used to compound hunt, for 9 years. And then things change as you get older. I'm not going to go into why I use a crossbow now, but people don't know the reasons, but they just assume, well, he never, he's not a deer hunter. He's just a guy that picked up a crossbow. It's like, when technically I've probably killed a lot more deer, than a lot of people, but it's like, just because I want to use a crossbow now, does it?
And it's like what we were talking about earlier. If you killed it with a bow, it's amazing. If you killed it with a gun, it's amazing. But you kill it with a crossbow, it's not amazing. I'm like,
becomes
how
a-
does that take anything away? Because
Yeah.
a gun is 10 times more an advantage than a
Yeah.
crossbow even. So
Exactly.
it's one of those things that the crossbow is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the
Yeah.
hunting industry. And I don't see why there's so much stigma behind that, because to me, sure, like a traditional bow is going to be the most difficult, then compound, then crossbow, then muzzleloader, then rifle. But the rifle is still the ultimate advantage in the woods
Yeah.
over any sort of archery equipment.
You're still judging distance and waiting for saplings to get out of the way.
Yeah, and
You
that's-
didn't know for sure it was 40 yards.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a guess. And I mean, the thing about it is, like, I think people just, they see it as a competition of tougher, or they see a crossbow as, well, he's not as tough, or this and that. It's like, it's not a contest of how I can kill a deer. Like what I was telling you guys, like, if you're not using a stick and rocks, you don't have room to talk. None of us have
Yeah.
room to.
You still had to take your
To-
climber in,
Yeah.
play the wind, do
Yeah.
everything else anybody else would
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
You got the deer within 40 yards.
Yep.
I mean,
I
that's an
say-
accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, any legal means of
Yeah.
taking a whitetail, if it gets you out in the woods and that's what you want to use,
If it's putting
Yeah.
meat in
by
the
all
freezer,
means
it's-
do it.
Yeah.
Because I'm all for more hunters, and maybe you're not a compound shooter, and not you, but in general,
Yep.
if you're not a compound shooter, but a crossbow gets you out there to enjoy
The early
wildlife,
season and
get out there and do it.
Yep.
I'm all for it.
Yep.
And just spread the joy and get people out there. But there's a lot of good that came from it too.
Oh yeah, and that's
I
the
mean-
thing. Like, I never really focus on the negative, because there's a lot more people that come up and congratulate and say, "Man, congratulations, this is awesome." Like, people will, when I go do these shows, like, people drive 5-6 hours just to come see this deer. It's just so it's cool to get those people to come out and just, they share their stories, I share my story, and it's just deer hunters talking, man, and that's what I love.
Well, I think a lot of people too. Most people are never going to see the Milo Hansen buck. So the fact that they have a chance, since you're in the Midwest, to see what the biggest deer, ever taken in the U.S. even looks like, and to, that it's only an inch and a half off the all-time world record. I mean, it's the closest thing they're ever going to see.
Yep.
What's it
Right.
like to even hold a deer over 200 inches, especially a typical at that.
Yeah.
Holy smokes!
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not a non-typical that looks like a rose bush and crazy stuff going everywhere,
Right.
which realistically, when they've got tines and stuff going everywhere, it doesn't take a huge rack. It's just it's a gross mass amount of points.
Yeah.
But to get a typical frame where everything is so symmetrical, I mean, that's
Yeah,
Yeah.
what was his longest time? Like his G2s or 3s or
His G2s and 3s were 13.
both of them?
Yep.
So, gosh.
Just a picket fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking 52
Like-
inches in 4 times
Yeah,
right
so
there.
and then dropped down to about 9, and then the 3.5 on the G5s, and then he had 28, 27 main beams.
Are you serious?
Yeah, 28,
28.
27. And his biggest circumference on his base, or his main beam,
Mhm.
almost 7 inches.
Get out of here.
So his base was like 5 and some change, like
Mhm.
5.5, close to 6. But his biggest mass was that almost 7 on that each side of the main beam.
Yeah, the mass, you can make up a lot of
Sure.
inches. That
Mhm.
mass, because you see a lot of deer that are
Mhm.
giant in their own, realm, but that mass to get the,
Yep.
and having the inside spread and just all those other variables, it's all got to come together.
Here's another, like whenever I've been talking to people about scoring deer and stuff, like the Boone and Crockett system, and on my deer, like the G2s, G3s, like the circumference of them, of the tines that don't get any like credit.
Mhm.
They got over 4.5 inches of mass.
So
just
he
in
held his mat.
all the way through.
And I think that goes back to what you were talking about earlier. He's a 5.5-year-old deer. You sent his teeth in. You got him aged. I don't know.
Mhm.
Was that here or was that
Yeah.
might have been at lunch or something? But again, that's how you know you start getting to those mature deer over 4.5 because they start carrying that mass out through the entire rack.
Yep.
Because up until 4.5, any extra calories consumed and energy goes into building that skeletal frame in that body. And then once the body is fully mature, then all the extra goods go to the antlers. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's just crazy. 28-inch main beam.
Oh yeah, he had almost 48 inches of mass all the way through.
Well, the G2s and G3s, 52 inches just
Mhm.
in 4 times.
Yep.
That's-
And I was talking to some people, and they said water displacement. If they took mine and Milo's and dunked it in water, just because of how thick the tines run it through, that mine would beat his. Just because if you take the whole rack into consideration of mass through the tines, through everything, would.
Is Boone and Crockett going to adopt the water displacement?
You would think.
Come
that
on, guys.
They would
What
have.
are we waiting
You would think
on?
they'd have like a scanner or like a laser scanner that would scan every part of that.
Yes.
Maybe in the future, who knows? But
Water displacement.
yeah, like
I
dropping.
like it. Yeah, I know exactly what you're
and-
talking about, but
and
that's
that's
interesting.
what people were saying. They're like, just because of the mass that carries through the tines, they didn't get any credit. But shoot, they're as thick as some main beams on a mature
Yeah.
deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we had it in front of us to look at
I know.
today.
I wish
I
I
can't
wish I
wait
could have
to
put it on
see
the
it.
plane with you.
Yeah.
Just set it right in the.
But people can come and see it.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
When?
That's good
That's
stuff.
Let's
right.
talk about that.
Yeah.
So August 20th at Rogers Sporting Goods, we're doing our whitetail weekend.
That's only about a week and a half away from when this
From
podcast
when
is
this
airing. Yeah.
And Dustin will be there
Yep.
with the Huff Buck.
And he's going to
And-
play some songs too. Because what else do you do in your spare time? You kept talking about
Yeah,
Nashville.
we like
Yeah.
we were talking
Yeah,
about deer
never-
for so long. We
I
haven't got
know.
to what he. You
But
know.
you're going to be able to see that deer in person.
Yes.
Yep.
So you've got to. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on that day, but to be able to see a record deer like that in person and
Yeah.
not a picture, it's totally different.
You have to. I tell everybody, pictures don't do it justice.
Mhm.
You have to put your hands on it and just see it because it's crazy.
Yes.
That'll
Yeah.
be cool to see. I'm excited.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting a lot of notoriety on that. But what you should get some notoriety on is your job you do in Nashville.
Singer songwriter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing that? You talked earlier that you used to tour with Luke Combs. And
Yep.
You've opened for.
I've opened for Travis Tritt, Sammy Kershaw, Luke. There's been some others. But yeah, I've been doing that since I was 19 years old, 20 years old, so 8-9 years.
Mhm.
I've just been traveling and, writing songs. And I put out my own songs and write songs for other people in Nashville. And, yep.
And you're going to play that weekend, hopefully, some.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to bring my guitar and
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
pick 5 or 6
That'll be
songs
great.
and show the deer off. And
No, it'll be a good time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
looking it up
Should chat.
on
people.
whatever Spotify, whatever you use, they just type it in Dustin Huff.
Yep, Dustin Huff, and you can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere where you stream or buy music, it'll be there.
Yeah. So this is going out in August. Is there anything upcoming for you? You
Music
can
wise,
talk about
What's
or
the
not?
future that you can tell people that's not a secret?
So I have 3 songs recorded. I recorded them a couple months back. They're going to be released this August. 3-song EP. I think it's going to be a good one.
Awesome.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we were saying outdoors country music, they go hand in hand. This is a perfect deal for
Big
you.
deer and 6 strings.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And it's been great getting to know you today and just the story and just a phenomenal.
Yeah, it's been
I
awesome.
love it. Sharing hunting stories anyways.
Mhm.
Well, and
Gets me excited. We were out
I
in
know,
the woods.
all
we were
I
out in
think
the woods
about-
today checking
Yeah,
stuff
we put a
out.
trail
we
camera out
put a
today.
trail camera up. We're like, hey, welcome, Dustin. You want to go set up some trail cameras?
I'll be perfectly honest.
Dustin approved. you
Yep.
know.
He did. It was Dustin approved. He did find a trail. So
Yes. So there's a guaranteed wall hanger going to be captured on this camera.
yeah.
No, what I was talking
Yep.
about is we've been talking about, waterfowl weekend is come and gone now when this airs, but I am all jacked up talking about deer hunting right now. And you start talking about those cool October days
Oh,
and the
man.
leaves
Well, the shade.
changing and the 50 degrees, man.
Yep.
And then walking outside. I'm getting goosebumps talking about
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Literally. This is
That's all.
ridiculous.
It's all I think about, man. It's
I'm literally getting goosebumps
Being in that
right now
shade
talking
today,
about
putting that trail camera up, it was like, oh, this is kind of nice.
It was.
It
It
wasn't
was
even that
fun.
hot.
It was. It was limited time out there, but
yeah, checking the fence row, seeing
Yeah.
All the
seeing-
bean field
yeah.
Deer
over there.
coming right through here. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's get one right here.
Yep.
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm.
No, it's
So-
been a great time.
I'm going to have to
today,
get the bow
hanging
out and shoot this weekend.
So recap though, not waterfowl, whitetail weekend,
Yeah,
August 20th.
yeah,
He's gonna be here.
yeah. He'll be there.
Performance, the Huff Buck, all that cool
All
stuff.
that.
You can
Yep.
come meet him, talk to him,
I'm here
show
all
him deer
day.
pics. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
The cool thing too is, right? He's in the record book. You too can get in the record
yeah.
book.
Yep.
how do we do
will
that?
have?
How?
We're gonna have. I'll tell you. We're
But
gonna
wait,
have-
there's more.
But wait, there's more. We're gonna have a team of 5 official scorers that can score your sheds or mounts if you have them. Whitetail, if you have a mule deer and you want to get that scored because it's the same scoring system, bring that up too. And
What's that cost?
That's free.
Yeah, we did that in 2019 or 2019.
Yeah.
2019. then.
2019, and it was
Yeah.
a blast, and we had
So
way
much
better
fun.
turnout. People brought
And how much
giant
fun it is
deer.
to see everybody's
Mhm.
deer
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, big or small.
Exactly.
I want to see them all.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
make sure you stop in and check them in. That's from the scoring will be from 10. The last deer you can drop off to get scored will be at 2. If it makes Pope and Young or Boone and Crockett, they can get that sent off for you if you would like to be put in the book. So that's super cool too.
Yeah.
And we got tons of giveaways, and we're gonna have, of course, it's Rogers Sporting Goods, so
food truck.
we're gonna have food truck and we're gonna have sales and
Mhm.
all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just gonna be a phenomenal day.
And then,
So,
yeah, that afternoon, Dustin's going to play some songs.
well,
Yeah,
yeah,
that'd be
I'll check his deer out, play country
Play some
music
country
songs,
music.
and
yeah.
tell deer stories.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, that's worth it right
That
there.
sounds like
Exactly.
a good Saturday to
Oh,
me.
yeah.
That's
It's
right.
gonna
It's
be
gonna be a
great.
good
Yep.
time. No,
So
I
along
can't
with
wait.
that, oh, it's gonna be a blast.
Yeah.
Along with that is the Whitetail World Championship, and I gotta
Yes.
hit
So
that,
that, yep, which we talked about today.
Mhm.
So starting August 1st through September 15th this year, you can sign up for the Whitetail World Championship. Huge deer contest. Biggest buck killed in the lower 48 archery contest. Compound or
crossbow.
crossbow. August 1st through September 15th is the sign up, and then the competition will start September 15th through January 31st. Different states have different
Yeah, within your
seasons.
legal
So,
hunting
within your legal hunting.
season.
And there'll be some links we'll put up on our website. I think we have one
All
as
the
well,
rules.
and you can find all the rules. The big one is, is your age, 19 years and older
Yep.
to
no
enter.
high, no
But,
high fence.
What's the
and
winner get?
big grand prize, $5,000 to first place, but we pay out the top 5 spots.
Mhm.
And I can't stress this enough. Don't be afraid to check in your deer. If you enter the contest, $25 for a chance at $5,000, and you kill something, and you're like, I don't know if it's big enough. Check it in. There were some guys last year that would have finished in the top 5 that didn't choose to check in their deer
Because they didn't think it was going to be big.
enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Isaac White, reigning champion out of Kansas last year, And then the previous 4 years was Evan O'Brien.
Yeah.
And he came in
he
second.
finished second.
Yeah.
He's got.
He's been
Yeah.
killing some
He's-
big
so-
deer.
So those guys are ready to defend some of them titles, but that's a great event too.
$25. You can sign up
$25.
online,
Yep.
and it's $5K, 5 to the winner,
Yeah,
and a free mount.
and you get a free
And a
mount
trophy.
and a trophy.
That you can tell your
And
buddies and
all
show them every
sorts
time
of-
they
Yep.
come over.
Yeah, it's a great contest.
Yeah.
Yeah, so make sure you get in on that too. And if you want to hear more about it too, and our Whitetail Weekend, and you stop by and you want to
Yep.
chat with us, we'll tell you more about it in person
Mm-hmm.
as well. But
Yeah.
You can say hi to Pat. He'll talk to you.
I love talking.
Yes. You don't say.
You don't say. This is my jam right here. We
Yes.
just chat all day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
But no.
Dustin, I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on.
Oh, man.
Yep.
It's been a good time.
I
Oh,
appreciate
man.
y'all.
I feel like
having
we
me,
could go
man.
on for a whole nother part
Oh
two.
yeah. If I didn't have to catch a plane,
Oh,
I
we
would.
could- yeah.
I'd be sitting talking deer hunting all night.
well, down the road as season gets going,
Oh,
we
yeah.
might be back, and
Yep.
we'll have to catch up with you and
One
see
one
how it's
last
going.
thing, though. Moose. He called it Moose. I was
Yep.
wondering why he got that name.
Because when I first saw him, when I first saw the antlers, that's all I thought in my head was, what is a moose doing in
Indiana.
In Indiana? That's all I was thinking was moose. You know.
Well, and a couple of the pictures you've shown me on your phone, the antlers look ridiculous in proportion to the deer. They really do, especially head on or from behind or whatever. It
Yeah.
just
He
they
just-
look
it's that big.
ridiculously wide. It's that big, folks.
Yeah,
I mean, it
and
just looks
that's-
ridiculous.
Like when he was walking through the woods, like it looked so unnatural just because he was so huge. Like he looks like a cartoon. Like it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Can't
if-
wait to see it in person.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
If anybody is within, like Dustin said, 5 hours, I mean, it's
Yep.
worth
Yes.
driving not only for the sales, but to see the buck and whatever. It'll be a good time. So
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't wait.
Yep.
Thanks again for stopping by.
yeah,
and
hanging out with us for
sharing
the day.
the story.
Yeah.
And
I
Yeah.
appreciate
If
it.
anybody wants
treating
to
us, so.
kill a record, you got to go to the spot you haven't been to in a while. Bring
Yep.
a climber and a thing of heat wave, and
Yep.
just
Yep.
wait.
Get you some heat wave, and I guarantee you'll kill a big buck.
yeah,
Or find a good
Be
spot
awesome.
to watch the sunset.
So
Yep,
find a good spot
exactly.
to watch.
That's right.
That's what you got
You
to
put
do.
all that
Yes,
together,
sir. Put
I'm
all
telling
that
you.
The trifecta.
Yep.
Yep, you have a great story.
All right.
That's right. All right, guys, we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you did, go ahead and give us a subscribe. That way you're going to get a notification every time we put out a new podcast. Chandler, what else should they do?
Go to our social media pages and give us a like on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. Get us subscribed to YouTube channel. We do product reviews there, and then giveaways is a great part of our social media as well.
And then we just want to thank you guys for what you guys do and support us so we can do stuff like this. So thank you.